Welcome to the Soccer Chaplains United podcast from the touchline. And now, here's your host, Rev Brad.
Hey friends, it's New Year's Eve. Well, we come to this point in the year where, really for me, I'm trying to take a little bit of time off for the family. The season, Major League Soccer, we're in off-season mode, and so, I find myself winding down a little bit. Well, recently my brother and his family were in town, and I don't know, I talk too much about my brother on this podcast, maybe because I think one day he'll listen. I don't think he listens, so I'm going to share a little bit and be a little bit vulnerable with you today. It so happens that some of my family members know this, that a number of years ago I did my heritage, ancestry.com kind of thing. I sent in the sample and got my results back. And I was super hopeful before I saw the results because I have leaned in heavily to my Scottish, UK, English, Irish heritage, and probably leaned in a little bit more into my Scottish heritage because I think that there's some parts of the story that are really intriguing. Plus my best mates from Scotland, Aberdeen, and we've just traveled together for a number of years now, and so I've had occasion to go to Scotland a number of times. So what was funny is my wife and I sent in our results together at the same time, and we got them back. And as we opened them up, I was just so excited to see how Scottish I am. The results were a little disappointing. Of course, your family tell you things. They tell you like, oh yeah, here's part of our family history and lineage. We've traced it back, but this is back in the day before, technology and all this DNA stuff. And who knows, is it really true? Probably. But anyway, so I got the results back. And my wife, some of you know, my wife, her family, her mother's side come from Mexico. My wife has more Scottish in her than I do. And that became a little bit of a laughing point. Certainly my brother and my brother-in-law, everybody found just a great thing to pick and poke at me about that because I was so much into my Scottish heritage in that part of the story. So now, to say that, my Irish side was much higher, over 51% Irish. And so I do have those Celtic origins and things in my DNA, but just a little bit imbalanced in terms of how I was pursuing certain things and exploring my history and really leaning into and diving into my history. Well, my brother was in town to kindly remind me of some of these things, but in October of this year, if you don't know, Ancestry.com did a big update. And I don't know how they do these things. Is it more samples come in, more research, more technology, and they take your sample and they're able to figure out more things. So what actually happened was my percentage of my Scottish, Northern East England DNA results improved or increased. And so I was excited yet again that I could lean into my Scottish heritage and that northeastern England, near the border kind of history. Some of you know that Celtic daily prayer has been an important part of my life. Is going through seminary, I was looking for a devotional resource, something that can kind of root and ground me a little bit more in my faith, and I needed that sort of devotional application. And a friend had turned me on to this, a good friend, Dave Meserve. He's been on the podcast before. He turned me on to this book called Celtic Daily Prayer, and it was written and developed by the Northumbria community, which is Northeast England. And again, just tapping into many of the Celtic traditions and the place of the church, and again, in my own story and research, have traced some of those things back to St. Martin and other significant stories that have been pretty important for me as I work out my calling as a chaplain and as a pastoral caring type of person, and as I work that out in the context of football or soccer. So with that, I still love my Scottish side of the story, my Scottish side of the DNA, but I do take a little bit of ribbing about it and for it because it's not quite as a significant part, at least percentage-wise, of my DNA. But I love the story. And what I wanted to come share, some of you are like, I'm turning this podcast off because this is boring and dull and I'm not interested, but I am going somewhere with this. As we come into New Year's Eve, one of the traditions that come out of the Scottish and Northern English region is called first footing. And it happens so that on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, there's a tradition where the first person to come across a household's threshold after midnight, they bring in sort of they could bring in fortune, a sign of fortune for the new year, or a sign of, not so good of things. And so there's these things, these imageries, and these moments that make up this what's known as first footing. And so I'm always curious for some of my Scottish friends and footballers that I've come across to ask, like, do you observe? Do you practice this first footing? And several of them have shared with me they do. They go from house to house. There's a lot of food and drink and merriment that go on. And usually the key thing is who's the first person to cross the threshold once midnight has struck. And there's some things to it too. So there's an ideal person to come across the threshold at first, and then there's a not so ideal person, and it links way back into different parts of the history and lineage. Let me get into it just a little bit. But an ideal first foot person, they say, is a tall, dark-haired male. Traditionally, that's the kind of person that's preferred. And really this gets back into sort of the invaders that would invade the coastal regions and come across and really attack the Britons. Now, it's unlikely or unlucky if you have a woman or a fair-haired man, so someone maybe with blonde or lighter hair. They were usually historically considered unlucky because you have these Scandinavians that are coming over and attacking and pillaging and carrying off the goods and everything in the village. So usually it's favorable if a tall, dark-haired male is the first person to cross the threshold. Well, I so happen to be a tall, dark, handsome. I don't know, but we would say I'd be okay to come across the threshold. In fact, I'd be favored to do so. Now, usually, too, this person needs to bring some symbolic gifts. Let me go into some of those gifts. Coal is one of those gifts. And really, that was a symbol that there would be enough warmth and a hearth that would carry someone through a difficult winter season or through cold. And if you've ever been to Scotland and northern England, you know it can get quite cold. Another one is bread or shortbread for sustenance. And I mean, I love good shortbread, as some of you know. But this idea of daily bread, sort of like a sustenance, something bread for living, was a good symbol. Salt was another of these symbols for flavor, for flavoring, for preserving different meats, different things. Salt was an important gift that often is carried by a first footer. And then whiskey. Or scotch, we might say, for good cheer, for merriment, for being able to enjoy things of life. Especially way back in the day, life was really tough. It was really hard. And so there were these moments and these things that reminded us that we can take joy in the midst of the journey. And a good scotch was perhaps part of that for good cheer. And then finally, coins. Coins, just a symbol of wealth. A symbol of, having things to trade, to barter, to buy, to purchase. Those representative gifts are all welcome on a first kind of footing. And so, a lot of what happens is people just go outside the household door and they wait until the stroke of midnight, and then they knock on the door and enter in. And that's often how first footing goes. But, again, as I said, there's several of my friends have made this habit of kind of going from house to house. And, I'm always curious, do they plan it? Is it like, hey, we're going to go to Bob's for a little while and then over to Michael's and then here we'll end up over here right around midnight? And how did they plan that? How did they plan to be the first footers? Hey, maybe next year we'll first foot your house. I'm not sure how that all happens, but I think what an interesting practice. And again, to tie this back into football, into soccer, where is first footing? I think that, as we come into, and of course, Major League Soccer, some of you know, is changing their schedule here in the future. And so we will more align with sort of European schedules, which begin with a season starting around about August, September, rather than in January, February. But as it goes for now, for the last 25 years, Major League Soccer has usually started their season in February or January, February. And so there comes this point where many athletes and coaches are with family and such and with friends, but then the report date is usually January 5, January 12, right around there. There's a few days after the first of the year, and we begin again. And so I think that there's an appropriateness to this idea of first footing that happens because, of course, some athletes have been training, they've been working, trying to keep their fitness as the new year, the new season approaches. But I've thought, in many ways, we want to get off on a good first foot, so to speak. We think about, I think about what's going to start happening in the next few weeks as players come back into the market. They're going to be going through testing and drills and working on their physical fitness and their shape for the season. Some of them will be recovering from injury. There's new staff that have joined the club. There's new coaches that have joined as well. And so getting off on the good first foot is important. And I think about these things in terms of our own spiritual lives. How do we get off on a good first foot? I think many times what we do is we say, like, hey, here are some things, some goals, resolutions, we may call them, for the year. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to be better in my disciplines. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to read more. I'm going to get off my phone and stop scrolling. Like, we set up all these different goals, and usually those things are, we carry them out with a certain modicum of success or failure. But I think that to open up our hearts, our homes, our careers, our lives to Jesus, He being the best first foot, to come across the threshold of our hearts, our homes, into our career spaces, into the spaces where we enjoy life, that's probably the best place. That's probably the best person. There is no greater person. I'll just say it. There's no greater person than Jesus to be the first foot into those spaces for us. And so, friends, I just want to encourage you here on this New Year's Eve, and as we wrap up the podcast for the year, is to consider, in what ways do you open up your heart, your home, your life, your footballing career, whether you're an athlete or a coach. Maybe you're a staffer, maybe you're a person that works in ticket sales, and maybe you've got a massive goal this year to sell more tickets, more seats, to sell hospitality areas, to just try and live and survive in the city where you're at. Maybe there's some other spaces where you need Jesus to be the first to enter in. Can we make this moment an invitation moment for Him to come into those spaces of our lives where we maybe have our hopes and our dreams, and we've carried them, we've had them for some time. Maybe they've gone answered or unanswered, and maybe we've held on to certain things, maybe with a bit of idolatry in view, in mind. And we need to release those things. We need Jesus to bring the first foot gifts and presents into that space for us. Where are the spaces where Jesus can bring warmth, where He can bring cheer, where He can bring wealth, wellness, wholeness, healing, All of these things. How can we let Jesus be the first to enter into the door? Well, to wrap up our time today, I thought, friends, that I would share this first footing prayer. Again, it comes to you and me from the Celtic Daily Prayer book. I just encourage you, maybe you have Celtic roots and tradition in your DNA and history and heritage. Maybe not, but maybe there's something else that's meaningful, a tradition, a way for you to acknowledge the first of the new year coming and all the hopes and dreams and promise that it carries. Of course, as we look back, we might see disappointment, frustration, struggle. But I think when we allow Jesus to be the first to enter in, all those things can be carried by and through and in and with him. So, friends, let me say and share this first foot prayer. It's really an invitation for Christ himself to come and to first foot for us. Can we open the door of our hearts? Can we open the door of our homes, the door of our lives, and welcome him in, whether he comes in quietly and alone or whether he comes in the company of others? Friends, listen to this prayer, the opening door. This day is a new day that has never been before. This year is a new year, the opening door. Enter, Lord Christ. We have joy in your coming. You have given us life, and we welcome your coming. I turn now to face you. I lift up my eyes. Be blessing my face, Lord. Be blessing my eyes. May all my eye look on be blessed and be bright. My neighbors, my loved ones, be blessed in your sight. You've given us life, and we welcome your coming. Be with us, Lord. We have joy. We have joy. This year is a new year, the opening door. Be with us, Lord. We have joy. We have joy. Amen. Well, dear friends, I pray that 2025, as it comes to a close, and 2026, as it is newly on the horizon, that as you open the door, that you would let Christ enter into the space where you are. Whether you're in the midst of trauma, difficulty, and pain, whether you're in the midst of a mountaintop high and joy and celebration, may we realize that as Jesus comes into these spaces, he carries with him, he carries our burdens, he carries us through these moments, and we can take great joy in seeing Jesus' first foot into our lives. Bless you, my friends. This is Rev Brad signing off for 2025, coming to you from the Touchline.